Welcome to the Geek 101 podcast, Road to Arrowverse Crisis, Episode 11. Today we're going to be covering Arrow Season 7, The Flash Season 6, and the special crossover, Elseworlds. With me, as always, are friends Tessa and Sam. How you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Good. I want to apologize / suggest a drinking game for today's episode. That every time that I say, that's not how time travel works, either just imagine me apologizing or you take a drink.
Okay, I've got a drink right here. So every time he says that, fans and listeners should hear.
Welcome to the podcast where Andy slowly gets drunk over the next hour.
Luckily, this is a LaCroix. So
I was going to say, how close is the nearest hospital?
All right, so let's get right into it with Arrow Season 7. What did you guys think of Arrow Season 7?
This season of Arrow made me believe in Arrow again. This was a season that, like, if the last season failed this city in the catchphrase of Oliver Queen, this season, I think, really redeemed the whole show, really. I mean, and the fact that we learned, I think, did we learn by it was before this season ended, right? That we learned that
yes, toward the
next
end.
Season would be the final season of Arrow. I think that helped. I think it helped tighten down the storytelling. I think I want to say it's the first 7 episodes of this season probably give one of the best sequence of episodes that has been on Arrow since season 2, with the Deathstroke sequence of episodes. So the Oliver in prison storyline really worked. I think the season-long arc really worked. A lot of this season is moving pieces into place. We're going to say that phrase probably way too many times today. But I think that they managed to do it in a way that was very compelling story-wise. I think that they got rid of some of the unnecessary drama that was causing the problems in the last few seasons. What do you guys think? Do you guys like the Oliver in prison storyline as much as I did?
Okay. Well, 1, I did like it. 2, because it is a CW show that has a prison arc in it. There's an underground fight club, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Specific CW trope.
This is the third such iteration of this fight club because, well, wait a minute. Was Archie's fight club last season too?
Yes,
it was the same season as The Flash.
So this one might have happened. Oh, okay.
No.
No.
You're correct. It was the beginning of season 3.
So this might have been the second one. They might have gotten to this one a little bit first, but there may have been 2 Fight Club storylines on CW on different shows at the same time.
Who did it better, Oliver Queen or Archie Andrews?
Archie.
Oh, Archikins.
Okay, so this
Has
arc
Oliver
also
been mauled by a bear? He has not.
Is that the only thing that hasn't happened to Oliver?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think Oliver might have been mauled by some kind of wild creature, though. Think back to all 5 years he spent. I'm sure he got impaled by a boar or something at some point on Lian Yu.
When how about when Ra's al Ghul kills him?
Okay. So you're calling Ra's al Ghul an animal. I got it.
No. I'm saying
No.
In that time period after Ra's al Ghul kills him, but before which one of his flashback friends saves him? Yes. So, in that time in between, who knows what matter of varmint and forest creature got to him?
Okay. Fair enough. I will say the prison break-ish kind of episode with Bronze Tiger has some of the best cinematography. Actually stood out to me as being really good because it's this long action sequence that's just in one cut, one take.
And the action choreography, I think, is really well done in that episode, too. I remember thinking that as I was watching the episode, because sometimes these fight scenes, while interesting or cool, can get a little repetitive. Sometimes Oliver just seems to have like the same 5 moves, like in every single fight scene. But I do remember that particular episode holding some really good action sequences.
Yeah. And overall, it's great. Oliver really could have handled this better, but I mean, Oliver could have handled how he gets into jail a little bit better.
Is this the last unilateral decision so far? I mean, I guess there's still half a season left.
No, the one at the end of the season is also a
I
unilateral
guess that's true,
decision,
too.
and Diggle has told him.
Oliver's unilateral decision-making gets him into the worst scrapes. Because, he goes to prison. He makes the decision to go to prison all on his own. He is the one who turns himself in order to pardon, or in exchange for the pardons of his allies, who are then told to never vigilante again, basically. And he does this without talking to anybody. So he's separated from Felicity and from William and from all of his friends due to his own decision-making process. And Felicity and William are put into witness protection program. That's where they are at the beginning.
And Diaz is still on the loose for the first half of the season.
Yeah, for once the season villain didn't die at the end of the season, which is usually what happens on Arrow. Diaz...
Well, even when Dark was defeated, he still showed up 2 more times.
But
even
he died.
dying. I was going to say, even dying, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. But Diaz does show back up. He didn't die. He wasn't resurrected. He just shows back up at the beginning of the season. I mean, and I think he provides a pretty threatening presence for the beginning of the season. Especially his interactions with Felicity, I noted as being particularly good, because he tries to kill Felicity a couple of times. Felicity decides that she just can't handle this anymore. There's a lot of trauma for Felicity at the first part of this season. And so she starts to develop these very, how shall we say, these very dubious coping mechanisms that involve buying guns. And
she becomes Batman, basically.
Yeah, and she starts making some kind of questionable moral choices with the usage of her technology.
Becomes Batman.
Yeah, I guess this is sort of a Batman storyline, but it's less of an obvious ripping it off of Batman than some of the previous seasons have been.
Yeah, I am glad, though, that we do dispense with Diaz eventually, more or less. And, we get into the actual main villain of the season. But the one thing, while I'm generally in favor of this season, they did Suicide Squad again. And it's just like, I don't understand. That was completely unnecessary. It's very frustrating. Please don't bring back the Suicide Squad ever again in the Arrowverse. The Suicide Squad, you're better than that. You're better than that. You don't need the Suicide Squad. Please don't do it again.
Right. Besides, we've got Taika Waititi on the Suicide Squad.
Right. Yeah, it is actually redundant now. You saw the first Suicide Squad movie and you were like, the actual Arrowverse did it better, I guess. But now we don't have to worry about that.
Well, and then we get to kind of see, too, at the beginning of this season, like, everyone trying to have a life outside of vigilantism. So you have, like, John Diggle is with Argus. That's better, I guess.
Curtis goes over to Argus, too.
Curtis is also at Argus. Dinah Drake is the... is she captain?
She's the new captain.
Of the police force, so she's the new captain. And Renee is being angry. Is he just an activist?
He's the one who won't let go of the vigilanteism.
That's right.
And that's how the new Archer... There's a new Archer introduced in the first episode.
A new Green Arrow. Very specifically is wearing the green.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Renee actually teams up with this new Archer. So Renee refuses to give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this new Archer that Renee is kind of annoying about.
Yeah, and the thing about Renee is I actually think that they did better with his storyline this season, especially as we'll talk about, I'm sure here shortly, the flash forwards. But part of it's because he, out of all of the characters, seems to understand that the problems surrounding Star City are more socioeconomic in nature than they are criminal in nature. Because, we do have these, like, big criminals who keep trying to explode the city every year. But at the same time, Renee is the one who's constantly reminding people that the real villains are the rich capitalists who are sort of ignoring the bad parts of the city and making them worse in a lot of ways. And that becomes like a really big storyline this season. So even though Renee...
I mean, some of these capitalists are also taking the bad part of town and making it into the best part of town, as the flash forward will tell us.
Yeah,
it's pretty. I think it's pretty easy to dispense with most of the stuff in present day, because the flash forward is so much more, I think, compelling. Emiko is the new Archer. Emiko is Oliver's half sibling because, of course, their dad was a terrible person. Of course.
Is there any more terrible things we can find out about Robert Queen?
I hope not.
Like, I just feel like the guy was a douchebag.
But essentially, Emiko's working with some shadowy organization called, what, the Ninth Circle?
Right.
Plot, doesn't really matter.
Well, the stuff between Oliver and Emiko is interesting.
Sure.
I think.
It passes time.
Okay. I will say, first of all, Ninth Circle, that's a great name for a shadowy organization. But the fact that they take out Diaz, like, I was really happy that Diaz was back out, being awesome. I thought that was a great moment, especially the whole, Felicity doesn't feel safe.
Right.
Stuff. That was great. And just Diaz getting burnt to death. Okay, cool. Then, we find out Emiko's his half-sister, and she wants to kill Oliver for reasons. And Oliver tries to convince her to be good. And this is one of the things that I really liked about this season, was ultimately Oliver doesn't have any effect on her. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to take care of this. Like this is not a character who gets their entire motivation changed because of a heart-to-heart.
Mm-hmm. Unlike Black Siren.
But at the same time, I feel like this character, like, it's still rooted in those conversations about wealth, right? And about, like, what wealthy people, the damage wealthy people can do and get away with it. Like, Oliver's father is able to have this, like, love child that he just abandons one day. And she grows up having a completely different life than Oliver and Thea, because her father actively, like, suppresses her existence, like the knowledge of her existence from the world. And so, yeah, she's a terrible person. And she's sort of developed. I don't know if she's as developed as she could have been. I'm not sure it matters, again, to the people who wrote this particular season, because there's some other things that they're playing with. But I do think it's interesting the way that these ideas about wealth and privilege and how that can have this immense damage on people's lives sort of gets reflected throughout this whole season.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the future arc, because really the present day stuff is just very Arrow by the book almost.
Well, there are three things that happen in the present too that do inform the future, and they all involve Felicity, basically.
Okay, so let's go ahead and list off those three.
So Felicity, is in charge of taking care of William, at least until Oliver is out. William gets taken away from them.
No, William asks to leave them.
Well, yes. But, yeah. But the ramifications of it is that once William's grandparents have him away, which William does initiate it, but once he's taken away, he is kept from them. There's a little bit more about that in the following season, but suffice it to say, once he made that decision, the grandparents were more than happy to make sure that Felicity and Oliver did not see him again. We also, Felicity, but that's okay because replacement child, Felicity is pregnant. Hooray. And also, Felicity decides to start a program called Archer and this is all based on her feelings of safety. It bleeds over into William. He asks to leave. There's some definite fray on their relationship that's kind of covered in Elseworlds, but they come back together when she and Oliver come back together when she gets pregnant. And as part of that safety issue, she starts Archer with her hacker or hacktivist friend, Elena. which
And
all plays out in the future.
Archer is very like facial recognition technology, like this idea that they can recognize which people are threats, which people aren't threats. It starts as like a house-wide system, but then she eventually modifies it to be used for like criminal.
It's basically the now defunct CBS show Person of Interest, all starring our favorite Caden James. So actually, it all comes together if you work long enough.
So those are the things that happen in the present storyline over the course of the season that have an impact on the future. Flash forward. So we've been doing flashbacks for the last few seasons. Now we have flash forwards, which I believe was a thing that happened on Lost. Is that correct? Is this another Lost playbook?
Yes.
And we'll be getting into the Lost playbook, quite literally, with the crossover. But let's future time. The year is what?
2049, right?
It's 40. 2049 is Central City.
Oh, I see. Okay, so 2040. And it basically, the way that the flash forwards go, in typical flash forward backward fashion, we get little bits of this information at a time. But basically, William, an adult William, so completely grown up,
who has never seen his parents since he was taken away earlier.
Yeah, he has never seen them, never heard from them. He comes back, well, he goes to Lian-Yu first, and he finds Roy Harper. So old Roy Harper is there. So by the way, the return of Roy Harper. He finds him there, basically says, I have this thing that Felicity gave me that has started, like, it started giving a signal off or something that brought him to Lian-Yu. He reunites with Roy Harper. They go to Star City. They meet up with old Dinah Drake, who has formed the Canary Network, which is in response to the fact that Star City has literally gone to hell, basically, in the last, few years.
Not the Glades, though.
No, so the Glades, which is traditionally the bad part of town, has now become the great part of town. They actually built a wall around the Glades.
And who is the primary player behind that?
Renee Ramirez.
That's right.
So Renee Ramirez decides to run for mayor, becomes mayor, builds a wall around the Glades. Everything outside the Glades is pretty much like a hellhole. Like, the police are corrupt, there's crime everywhere, different gangs run the city, including the Deathstroke gang, which will become important later. It's funny how Deathstroke just never completely goes away. And everything in the Glades is great, and the big reason for that is this Archer program, which Felicity invented, but obviously has been co-opted to be used against the people. It enforces sort of this idea of safety. Anyone who comes from the outside is immediately arrested or eliminated in some way.
And so the rest of the Star City is meant to fend for itself. And so when Roy and William come to Star City, of course they meet Dinah with the Canary Network. They also meet Connor Hawke.
Yeah.
And his mysterious vigilante friend.
She's not really a vigilante.
She's
a wrestler.
Yeah.
She's like an MMA fighter.
Right. Yeah.
Mia.
She doesn't know. She's not Mia.
She's Black Star. Sorry. Black Star first.
Yes. Black Star is introduced in episode 8. It is not for another 5 episodes. After the crossover, after Suicide Squad again, there's an episode where a documentary is made about present day Oliver and friends becoming deputized by the police.
Which is the 150th episode of Arrow,
yes.
By the way.
So they were able to bring some old stories, old people back in. But that is a catalyst plot-wise because Black Star and Connor are able to watch the documentary and use it to find the bunker.
Which is overgrown and old and hasn't been used in years.
And then the big reveal after that, now all the pieces are in place to reveal that Mia, Black Star, is Mia, and Mia is Oliver's daughter.
Oliver and Felicity's daughter.
What?
Yeah!
Yes, and then of course in chronology, the next episode of Arrow is when we find out present-day Felicity's pregnant. So it's a really, there's some smart things that they do toward the end of the
reason
season.
why this is surprising to everyone is that Felicity and Oliver never told anyone that she was pregnant. Like, they kept Mia's identity, birth, everything completely a secret. There is a really great episode in this season where they talk about, her growing up. Like, she grows up without Oliver, which is another indication, I think, that we kind of know how Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to go in some ways. We'll talk about that more when we get to the crossover. But she grows up without Oliver, with just Felicity in her life, although she's trained by Felicity and by Nissa Al Ghul, who makes an appearance very briefly, to basically be awesome. I don't really know what they were training her for, like just to defend herself, just because she's Oliver's daughter.
Thing. You just train because it's gonna happen.
Right.
What is it? Doesn't matter. It's gonna happen.
She finds out that her mom has sort of been lying to her, so she does the typical teenage, like, you can't control my life, and decides to move to the bad part of town and get a tattoo and become an MMA fighter, because that's what you do.
Well, there was the whole business.
I mean, what did you do, Tessa?
well, there was the whole business of Felicity faking her own death.
Yes, and then we also find out is that Felicity, that when William comes to look for Felicity, he's told that Felicity is dead, that she became a criminal and then she died. We find out later that's not true, but most of them think that she's dead for most of the season.
What we do find out is that hacktivist friend Elena, the reason that Archer has become so terrible is that Elena kind of took over and allowed that to happen.
Right.
So
the other thing too is that we get this. So Renee is mayor, and he's kind of
the worst.
He's kind of the worst in this future.
With a bad comb over.
Yeah, with a terrible comb over.
Not great.
But his daughter, Zoe, we get to see her as an adult as well, and she's now a canary.
Vigilantes up.
Yeah, yep. So she vigilantes up, goes behind her dad's back, and is a canary, along with Dinah.
And is generally awesome.
And she's pretty awesome too. And it's kind of cool to see, these characters that are kids in the present day storyline actually be adults. We get to see some good character arcs, I think. We get to see William and Zoe, because they were friends as kids. Mm-hmm. We get to see them reconnect. We find out that Connor was adopted so Connor Hawk is the son of Bronze Tiger.
Who we saw previously in a Legends episode, Visit to the Future.
Right. He was adopted by Diggle because I guess at some point Bronze Tiger dies. We don't know anything about this yet in the present. But he's adopted by Diggle and he's raised by Diggle and Lila, I assume.
And that brings up the last member of Saved by the Bell, the new class, JJ.
JJ.
Who is not seen.
But he's mentioned. He is the leader of the Deathstroke gang.
So
that little kid that used to be baby Sarah and now is baby JJ
eventually
becomes a Deathstroke. So
hooray.
Yeah, so we get all these really interesting revelations. I personally think the flash forwards work really well. I think they're some of the most interesting things that happen this season happen in the flash forwards. I think it's hilarious that William ends up being a tech genius more like Felicity, and Mia ends up being this stubborn, crazy badass like Oliver. So there's just some really interesting things, and it's also interesting to see some of the characters be old too, like Roy and Dinah and Renee and then Felicity at the end of the season. So it's interesting, and by the end of the season, of course, we also get to see Mia suit up, which is really cool.
Yeah, the payoff to the future storyline is that the surviving OG, OTA, NTA, OG, Arrow people hand it off to the newbies, and that's that. And I mean, the question was at the end of the season, what is the new class going to do? Are we going to time jump at some point because of Crisis? My personal theory, although this is not how time travel works, is that they were going to converge with the old Team Arrow in their past, our present, whatever.
Yeah, it's just really interesting to see the way that they actually take risks this season. They don't just rely on the old formula. They try to do things try to just tell stories about the future, or a future, if you want to say. Mm-hmm. But then also have some of these characters do some kind of morally compromising things, like Felicity. Of course Archer was a bad idea. Any weapon system that's based on facial recognition technology is going to be a bad idea. And so we get to actually see the result of that in the future as well. So it's interesting to see how some of the things that happen in the present get to pay off in the time jumped future.
Mm-hmm. Right. And last thing we should cover before we skip on to the Flash is the last scene
Do we
of
want to
this
talk
season.
about Elseworlds first before that?
No, I really want to get the Flash over with.
Okay.
All right.
So the last scene of this season is future Felicity going to Oliver's grave, and then the Monitor showing up, who we'll discuss later. Yeah, okay, fine. Let's
Talk about Flash, then
Yeah.
come back to this.
Yeah. Let's talk about Flash. Okay, Flash, the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful season
Oh,
5.
Five.
Season 5.
Yes.
Okay. This is not good, and this season does not do a lot of favors to my passionate dislike of one Iris West Allen.
Who is a terrible mom.
She's a terrible, terrible mom.
She's the worst.
Oh my god.
The only person who's worse than Iris is her daughter. And we get rid of her.
Oh.
Okay.
This season is not good, you guys. Like, last season of Arrow, season 6 of Arrow was bad. This is also bad. For a lot of reasons. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Let's just dive right into it. So, there's a wonderful new villain in town because when Barry punched the satellite, a bunch of shrapnel came down that had dark matter in it and made a bunch of new metas, just like every season of The Flash begins with a bunch of new metas.
But this one is played by the poor man's Keanu Reeves, Chris Clark.
Aww.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're right.
Can I just say I didn't care about Cicada at all? I know that's gonna offend some comic book fans, probably.
No, it's not. No. Nobody who watches this is going to like Cicada.
Like
he was the worst, and he was literally a MacGuffin.
Yeah,
the entire season.
But even as a MacGuffin, and we'll talk about that, but I just did not understand his motivation. I just didn't understand how how does the dagger work?
It doesn't matter.
Magic? I am very confused about a lot of things that happened this season, and I don't think it's my fault. I don't think it's because I wasn't paying attention. I think that there's a lot about this season that's very disjointed, that doesn't make sense. There are a lot of decisions that are made that don't come out of character. Mm-hmm. They come out of plot necessity. And I think that makes it very hard to follow, besides all the time shenanigans.
Well, the time shenanigans are the things that Cicada makes no sense, because they're not following any sort of rules of time travel. The dagger seems like magic because, again, this is not how time travel works. Excess's existence, if we're using Back to the Future rules, which we are negated the second that she comes in and blurts out that I'm your daughter. And I don't even know that they really do the work to go, well, yeah, that's how it would normally work, but she's part of the Speed Force, so delayed reaction, 11/22/63, time tries to fix itself. This just isn't how time travel works.
Yeah. We just talked about a lot of stuff. We should probably slow down.
No, I don't think there's any need.
Yeah.
Okay, Nora is Barry's daughter from the future who wants to go see him because Barry disappears in the year 2024, and she never really got to know her father. So,
coincidentally, obsessed with the Flash.
Yes, absolutely obsessed with the Flash.
Iris dampened her powers.
Okay, so yeah, that made me so angry. Okay, so Nora as a character is fine. She's a little dumb, but her dad is also kind of dumb, so whatever.
Okay.
But when she comes back in time, and she's obsessed with her father because she never got to really know him, and also she finds out he's the Flash, and the Flash is her favorite superhero. So all that makes sense why she would want to follow Barry around a lot. But she is very cold towards Iris, and we find out it's because Iris at some time in the future implanted her infant or toddler daughter with a device that suppressed her speed. And so Nora grew up not knowing she was a metahuman, not knowing she was a speedster. She has purple lightning, which is kind of fun. But she also finds out by accident that all this stuff by accident. Her mother never tells her. Her mother also never bothers to explain why she did this in the future. And so on the one hand, it's really hard to blame the Iris of the present for this because the Iris of the present has not made this decision and is not privy to any of the information for this decision.
But the Iris of the
same
present
time,
would totally have done all this.
I know, but like at the same time, it's just like, but she also refuses to apologize. And like that's a pretty significant like decision about someone's body to make without their consent. And so it's really difficult for me to have a lot of sympathy for Iris being like, oh, but I'm not that person yet, when I'm just like, all she wants to hear you say is that you're sorry. Like, that's all she wants you to say. Like, why can't you have the emotional intelligence to understand this?
So you know the part in the Star Wars prequels when Anakin's becoming very powerful and his surrogate parents, the Jedi Council, are like, no, don't do that. We're not going to tell you things. You can't do stuff. And Anakin, being a moody teenager, decides to go find his knowledge elsewhere. And Palpatine's like, this sounds fun. I bet I can turn you into a dark, evil person by twisting you and manipulating you because you're already upset. So if you remember that, basically what happens with Nora is no surprise because Iris won't help her. She goes finds Eobard Thawne.
In the future.
And he hatches a plan. He says, I can give you access to great power. It really is just like Star Wars, except in this version.
I liked that twist. I really did. I liked that Eobard Thawne was helping her.
Well, it's because they didn't give us a better option. Like, Cicada was literally so boring that Eobard Thawne showing back up, who's clearly one of the greatest Flash villains, was like a breath of fresh air. Like, it was like, oh, finally, someone who knows how to be a villain. Like, that was the best part of the whole season, was the fact that Eobard Thawne was in it and was.
I do want to talk about what Barry does when he finds out that she got help from Eobard Thawne, which I think is one of Barry's best moves. Period.
Clearly well thought out.
But also, I love how everyone else reacts to Barry doing this. So, Barry just straight up just takes her back to the future, drops her off, and tells her not to come back.
And she, respects his wishes, and
absolutely.
That's the end of that.
And every single character here is like, Barry, you overstepped your lines. And Barry's like, no, I didn't. She literally worked with my worst villain and didn't tell me.
And I told her that this villain killed her grandmother.
Yep, but she doesn't seem to care about that. And it's really funny because of how much I hate Iris, and her nagging Barry about this does not help.
She threatens to leave him, too. Like, she just, leaves.
Right. There's this weird thing. First of all, yes, Nora is their daughter. They should not be having any interaction with the future thing. With anything from the future. That's something that Barry should know all too well, and that they kind of brush off, but great. You know what? Like, oh, we had this little bit of time. That's great. That should be enough. But no, also apparently there's this thorough joke about Iris's cooking that keeps coming back up.
Mm-hmm.
Which really kind of annoys me too. But that's because of the weird sexist undertones that, she should be good at cooking because she's a woman. There's just so much about this that I don't like, and I don't like Iris at all, so I hate this series even more. Or this season even more.
Well, the fact of the matter is that basically, the way that this season creates a very specific time travel problem called a causal loop, which basically, when Nora comes back and tells her parents that she is their daughter, she is telling them, you will have a daughter called me and I'm it. And that breaks in a non-quantum time travel thing, which is totally what we're doing. Ignore the fact that it's a multiverse. We're totally doing this, they've drawn the Back to the Future timeline on the chalkboard in this show, so that's what they're doing. So a causal loop's been created, and that in theory would break time. The universe is over. There's no more Arrowverse. But they just ignore that, and there's no problem until they do what they need to do at the end of the season, and then she disappears, which is what should have happened all along. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
And let's talk about how Barry discovers that she was working with Wells, because this is another thing where I really hate Iris. So this version of HR, or Wells, is...
Sherlock.
Sherlock. My least favorite Wells.
He's a detective who immediately suspects Nora, which, great. That's exactly what a outside observer should be doing.
Somebody should.
When Iris finds out that he's kind of investigating her reaction is rage-inducing.
I don't know. Like, here's the thing. This season was trying to say something about parenting, but I'm not sure what it was trying to say. Like, I just spent the last few hours grading student papers, and I feel like for most of them, my answer was, this is not an argument. This is, whatever this is, it's not an argument. That's kind of what I feel about this season. Like, it was trying to say something about, like, how parenting is innate, or that you have, like, these feelings for your kids, or that you should be protective of them, or something like that. But it couldn't figure out exactly how to say it. And the best it could come up with was Iris sort of, like, yelling at people about Nora.
Is this the season where Jesse Martin hurt his back and wasn't in most of the episodes?
Yes.
Because, like, I'm like, where's the real parent in this show? And I think this was the season he was gone. So, especially in a season where they were trying to say something about parents and fell flat on their face, they were further impeded.
Right, especially with Cicada and the whole, it's his adopted daughter, and
she was in a coma, but that didn't make sense either.
We're doing a scream, you guys. There are 2 cicadas.
There are 2 cicadas, but, like, I don't...
Okay, now...
It's really not fun.
Even in the darkest of times, though, there is a glimmer of hope. And this season did have a glimmer of hope in the form of one episode that
I know which one you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, which episode am I talking about?
Shark and Gorilla going on adventures, best friends forever.
Yes.
King Shark versus Gorilla Grodd. This is clearly playing to the comic book fans, but because which is great, I'm totally fine with that. But it is, like you said, it's fun. That's the thing. Watching The Flash should be fun. This season did not feel fun.
This was also Joe's reintroduction into the show, actually, it turns out. So it was good for a couple of reasons.
So this season really worked, this episode really worked. Just sort of like, let's bring the fun back to Flash.
That's pretty much it. Nora ends up dying.
She doesn't die. She never existed.
Yeah,
right.
Never existed.
That's also fine, except we know that she must have existed because of what happens in the first episode of the next season. And
yeah, that's not how time travel works.
So the whole point, for those of you who are listening, the whole point of this season was that Cicada, his dagger is metatech. That's like a thing that's introduced. It literally does not matter what happens. It's magic. He has this dagger and it suppresses meta abilities. And so that's why they have a hard time fighting him, is because it suppresses the abilities of Flash, Vibe. We should talk about Vibe before we're done. Mm-hmm. And not Caitlin, because we find out Caitlin is not a metahuman. Is not a meta. She has had the Killer Frost persona inside her for a very long time. Anyway, and so we find out that actually this whole season, the reason why Nora gets sent back by Eobard Thawne from the future is that Eobard Thawne in the future is in prison and is about to be executed for his crimes.
And the reason he
probably rightly so. But the reason he can't escape, we find out, is because he has Cicada's dagger strapped to his chest, which dampens his speed. And so in order to escape, he ends up sending Nora back, encouraging her to reconnect with her father and to defeat Cicada, so that way the dagger will be destroyed, so the dagger never existed, so Thawne can escape. None of this literally makes any sense.
Except Thawne would have never been imprisoned by the dagger if the dagger was destroyed before he was imprisoned with the dagger.
Hey. Okay?
This is not how time travel works.
We are under liability now for any alcohol poisoning because of Sam.
Yeah, no, it's kind of it's clearly Back to the Future, right? Because then as soon as this all happens, Nora Back to the Future. She literally fades out of existence and like has a very tearful goodbye with her parents. After she and the Flash fight Dawn, who escapes.
Right.
Of course.
But they still remember her.
But they still remember who she is. And I kind of wonder, is this like a Doctor Who situation where like if you do the time travel, then you remember the time? Anyway.
I just want Christopher Lloyd to come out and scream at them that they're destroying the universe.
Anyway, so, and everybody's very sad because Nora is gone. But yeah, the problem I think is that this season didn't make sense. They were again trying to get too cute with time, but this is the worst version of them trying to get too cute with time. It doesn't really work. The only thing that does work is Thawne, honestly, because again, they had him be played by Tom Cavanaugh, who is again wonderful. Yeah. So, you know, he can get away with saying things like, you can try my version, but it's a little negative. Like, he can say lines like that, and it's fine, because it's Tom Cavanaugh.
Cisco time.
Yes.
In episode 12, they decide
bad
that
idea.
One of the ways that they could defeat Cicada, because Barry wants to appeal to his better nature. And, you know, Cicada's just really bent out of shape about the whole meta thing and meta people discovering their powers and becoming evil. And so Barry and friends decide, you know, maybe a cute, cuddly way to deal with this is what if all these people who were destroying Central City because they don't know how to cope with being metas didn't have to be metas anymore. We could cure them.
Any cure storyline in any comic book is eugenics. Like, that's what it is. And so, like, I understand the impulse here, but it's just like Felicity and Archer in Arrow. Like, you cannot make technology like this if you have not fully thought through how it could be used. And it really bothers me that they even have this conversation on The Flash, or that they don't see it through to the end of the conversation, because it's presented as a very good thing that both Caitlin and Cisco are working on, because Cisco has decided that he does not want to be Vibe anymore. And
he wants to be a real boy.
Which again, how is anyway?
For reasons.
He met a girl and he doesn't want her to be in danger because Mary Jane.
Anyway, so he and Caitlin work on this Metacure for the entire season. And even though multiple people, including Killer Frost, tell him that it's a bad idea, that this could be weaponized, basically, against metahumans, he does not listen. He creates it anyway. And then when the entire city is under threat from Cicada, they offer it to people as an alternative to being killed by Cicada. And again, this feels very coercive, right? Like, you have to take this cure or you'll be killed by a serial killer.
Right. Now,
so take the cure.
Now,
like,
here's the thing, right? Once they have the cure made, they're sitting right there and they're like, oh, or we could just use this to stop Cicada, the little girl in a coma. I get the idea of bodily autonomy, but if you are accepting how their version of time travel works, and that all they have to do is just inject this one little girl who's in a coma and has never been able to use her powers anyway with the cure, they will stop everyone from dying.
Yeah, but it's ethical situations like this that can cause us to say, like, okay, well, who gets bodily autonomy then? Like, is it, do small children have bodily autonomy? Do you have to be 18 to have bodily autonomy? Like, is it okay if your condition seems threatening to other people? You know what I mean? Like, it becomes this like ethical question then.
Right. And I get that. And if there were any other situation where they didn't know that this little girl goes on to use her powers in this specific way.
Yeah, but once they destroy the dagger, can she use her powers in that way? Like, again, like, the problem is that their time travel is fucked up. But, like, the other problem I think with this is that if you're going to do this, like, if you're going to have this as a storyline, that's fine. But, like, don't pretend that this isn't something that's inherently dangerous. Like, that it's something that won't come back to bite you later. Or that it's not an ethical question. Because they treat it as if, like, this isn't something we should talk about because it makes sense in the context of this show. And what I'm afraid of is that when we start having these conversations and we don't show the potential consequences, then bodily autonomy becomes something that's not considered an issue. I mean, it's the same issue with Iris implanting young Nora with the speed dampener chip, right? It's like, okay, well, is that the right move? So again, like, these questions needed to come up in this show, but they didn't have the subtlety to be able to talk about them in the way that they needed to talk about it.
No, they didn't even really try to be subtle about it. And the way that Cisco reacts in multiple different ways is really, really bothersome.
Well, you think that because it's both Felicity with Archer and Cisco with the Security, you think that both of them, as people who invent things, would have like more awareness of the ways in which technology can be used to control people. And so, like, I feel like both of them needed to go back to an ethics class. like both of them needed to like really have somebody say, hey, have you actually thought this all the way through, all the ways this could go badly? Like, we already know from Legends that Argus goes evil at some point. Like, how is this not going to be something that they use?
Right. I will say, like, and this is one of the things why Arrow works better. It comes from a much more understanding place.
Right. It comes from a character's decision. Right? Like, the fact that Felicity is so scared and like is worried about security, it makes sense that she would make the decision to then create something to make her more secure. This decision does not come from anything that we've previously known about Cisco as a character. Like, it doesn't...
And also, he's still going to be working with Team Flash. Like, that's the thing. Like, his idea of like, oh, well, I don't want my lady to be in danger. He's still working on Team Flash. Like, yeah, let's wrap this up and do Elseworlds.
Yeah, a lot of the characters make decisions that don't come naturally to the character. But Ralph is great. The Book of Ralph.
The Book of Ralph.
We don't have to talk about the Book of Ralph. If you don't know what it is, please just watch the season.
it's Ralph's version of saving forgetting Sarah Marshall.
But yeah, that's it. That's the best part of the whole season, the Book of Ralph.
Yeah. Well, and Sherlock has many ex-wives. They're all Adler. So you've got the Sherlock,
Adler, so the
Sherlock Adler thing.
Yeah.
He meets the Adler on this Earth, and like they hang out. And he eventually leaves.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean the Wells thing. I love the Wells gag. This is my least favorite version. I mean, again, it doesn't work very well. It just seems like a kind of plot-driven character in a lot of ways. Whatever. But I mean, it's still Tom Cavanaugh, so like, still good.
Elseworlds. This is the name of the amazing crossover that has a great... I think this is a beautiful premise, and this really encapsulates what the Arrowverse can be when it's firing on all cylinders.
What would you do if you woke up in bed with your best friend's wife, but she thought it was your best friend and not you?
Something like that. So
it's a quantum leap thing.
Yeah, they
which comes up several times in the crossover.
Definitely a quantum leap thing.
Yeah,
it's not a Freaky Friday.
No, it is not a Freaky Friday. So Barry wakes up, or well, really Oliver wakes up. Oliver Queen wakes up with being the Flash, having lived the Flash's history, and Barry wakes up having lived Oliver Queen's history.
Right, and they've switched names. So Oliver Queen, played by Stephen Amell, everyone thinks that he's Barry Allen, and vice versa for Barry. Everyone believes he's Oliver Queen.
And the only one who does not, the only people who do not believe this are either themselves or fantastic Lost alumnis. God, is it Jeffrey Davies? No.
Yes.
It is?
Jeremy Davies.
Jeremy Davies. Yes. Jeremy Davies, who is an amazing character actor who is on Lost.
That's right.
I forgot who he played on Lost.
Didn't he play the physicist?
I mean, yeah, he played the physicist who, like, his mother knew he was going to die, and...
Yeah, his name is... it's great because he's another character who's named after a scientist.
But he's John Deegan in this one, which he also played a character in the Constantine TV show, so that's great.
And I haven't read a lot. I don't know what mythology John Deegan is a part of. Like, is he a Flash villain or a Batman villain? Batman villain, right? Because he's at Arkham.
According to this,
Dr.
according
Destiny.
to the internet, he is Dr. Destiny.
Which, the way I know him, because I'm a huge fan of the Sandman comics by Neil Gaiman, is that he plays a particularly memorable villain in a issue of Sandman. And so it was really interesting for me to see him here, because I wasn't really familiar with his character anywhere else, but I think he does a pretty good job. Like, he's just as nuts here as he is in Sandman. But I don't really know what other comics he appears in.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Jeremy Davies' history. You know, a lost. Oh yeah, it was Daniel Faraday.
Daniel Faraday.
Yep. But he was also in Hannibal, Constantine, Lucifer, American Gods, Twin Peaks. Like, dude gets around.
American Gods too.
Yeah, he was in Jesus. He played Jesus Prime. Which, no, is not a Transformers.
Seems like he should be.
He was also in God of War as the big villain. That's a video game thing. Some fans will get it. Anyway.
So basically this mysterious person shows up and gives John Deegan, who is a eugenics advocate at a school. He's a psychiatrist. You know, it's always great when your psychiatrists believe in eugenics.
If we could just change people to where they wouldn't, be evil.
Anyway, this mysterious godlike stranger gives him this book that basically tells him, like, this book will help you rewrite reality, rewrite it however you want to.
And this is what
this is what he decided to do.
Ugh.
Was to switch Barry and Oliver. Actually, he says later he was trying to make himself the Flash, but then he said there's a bit of a learning curve. So this was actually more of an accident than anything else. But
I mean, it's fun though.
Yeah, like it's a fun gag. Like, it's a good gag to have Oliver. I mean, there's a lot of hilarity, right? For the fact that they swapped lives.
And we learned that over the time of this crossover, we learned that Team Flash has emotional intelligence, but is pretty stupid.
Very stupid.
And when it comes to Team Arrow, they're much smarter, but have if you could have negative emotional intelligence, that's what they have.
So what we've learned from this is that Supergirl is actually the most well-adjusted of the Super Friends.
Okay. So, first of all, one of the best things about this series that I really enjoyed is Iris insisting multiple times that the Stephen Amell is her type and the Grant Gustin person is not at all her type.
Right, because it plays back to that thing about her having a huge crush on Oliver Queen in the previous seasons.
Right.
There's this fun joke.
It's beautiful, except as I brought up off mic, Barry is weirdly possessive of her in this time frame, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, but there's some really fun laughs, right? Like this idea that Oliver is the Flash, and which, by the way, we find out that Stephen Amell. I really like Stephen Amell. I think that he is a very attractive person. He does not look as good in the Flash suit.
Well, no, he looks like John Wesley Shipp.
I was going to say, and by the way, we didn't talk about how this starts.
Oh yeah,
this starts with another Earth in wreckage.
Earth 90
with lots of other vigilantes, including the Green Lantern, dead, and John Wesley Shipp's. And we find out this is John Wesley Shipp as Barry Allen. I think, because this is the costume from the early 90s show.
I think Earth 90 is supposed to be a reference to that.
Yeah, we're basically told that Earth 90 is the Earth from the previous series of The Flash, which is really great. But that's how it all starts.
Yeah, so we see this destroyed Earth, right? Like all of these heroes, like Hawkman, and like all of these people are dead.
And dude, the Barry Allen, John Wesley Shipp's Barry Allen is crawling to is the same mysterious stranger who gave our eugenic psychiatrist the book.
And he has this, yeah, and he has the book in his hands, and he basically says, like, you failed, basically, like, you did this to yourselves. And so part of the other thing that's happening in this first episode is that there's some really weird weather that's happening as well. There are red skies and lightning, and we find out, I think it's in the second episode, that it's because this Flash has been trying to break through from Earth 90 to Earth 1 to warn them about this mysterious stranger, but we can get to that a little bit later.
Yeah. Let's go over the fun at the beginning, because when they Barry and Oliver both come to Team Flash like, hey, there's something wrong here. This is exactly what's wrong.
And they immediately institutionalize both of them. Like, they immediately lock both of them away. Oh, God.
You're going to have to break your thumb. Your ligaments are stretched. You're going to have to break your thumb.
Yeah,
dislocate your
thumb.
Dislocate
your thumb.
Sure,
yeah.
whatever.
Well, then he has to teach Oliver how to phase through the door.
Yeah.
Is that right?
But don't screw it up.
Also, if you watch the scene where Grant Gustin has to quote unquote like dislocate his thumb, in the next like while they're still in this
it's still just hanging there.
Right, yeah. Like they had to have gotten like a rubber prosthetic or something.
That might be my favorite part, is when Oliver just starts laughing at him.
Oliver weirdly swings a lot between laughter and anger in this crossover. Like, he's really not happy about the whole body swap, whatever you want to call what's happening here. But at the same time, like, I think he really enjoys being the fun one for once. Like, I think everyone involved is having a lot of fun.
Well, Oliver's first reaction is, Barry, what did you do this time?
Yeah. Because, of course, Barry's the one who would have fucked it up. But he didn't this time. But yeah, I mean, we get some really fun, like, they have to adjust to using each other's abilities, right? Because Oliver's not used to having superpowers, but Barry is also not used to the certain skill set that Oliver has.
Yeah, we basically learned that this is like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like, Barry's successful because he is able to channel positive feelings and happiness, and Oliver is able to be successful because he challenges his rage, and Kara's successful because she's super awesome.
Yeah.
It's basically like they use different powers and they need to combine them together.
But basically, Barry and Oliver. So there's a lot of fun things. We get to see the Diggle gag again, except for this time it was Oliver that super speeded them away. But basically, because of the really terrible reaction of Team Flash, which again, weirder stuff has happened. I'm really not sure why they freaked out here exactly. I mean, anyway. Because of this, they decide to go to another Earth to get a second opinion.
Earth 38.
On whether, yeah, so they go to Earth 38 and they meet up with
Smallville theme song.
Yeah, so Kara and Clark and Lois. Is this the first time we've seen Lois? Lois Lane?
It is, isn't it?
They mentioned her before in the show, but I don't think we've actually seen her. I think this is the first time that she appears on the show. Anyway, so they're in Smallville, so
the Smallville theme plays, and that is
yeah,
that's great. Sorry.
Yeah, so they show up and they recognize, Supergirl recognizes them. She knows that Oliver is Oliver and Barry is Barry, and they meet Superman, who they had never met before. So they got some fun there too. I love the immediate look of suspicion that Oliver has for Superman. Like I know it's a callback to the comics, but it's like this just immediate frown of like narrowing of eyes at Superman. But yeah, so then they have this whole like training scene where they're trying to train each other how to use each other's powers, and Oliver yells at Barry, and like there's a lot of like mean things said on both sides, but they make up eventually.
The only real trick they missed in the whole Smallville riff is I feel like Barry and Oliver should have gone up into the loft into the barn and had a heartfelt conversation. That was the only thing that was missing as far as Smallville callbacks.
Clark also mentions that the letter is rickety, which I believe.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because Lois is like crawling up there. That's right.
Yeah. Sorry. That's just. It's a great moment to geek out over Smallville, which apparently we're getting a reboot of because
Alice and Mac needs a job.
we should not talk about that.
Okay.
No.
There's a Lifetime movie about it though.
Oh God. Anyway, they decide to go to Gotham for to check out Arkham Asylum.
Hooray!
Yeah. Well, they go back to Central City first to fight Amazo.
Oh yeah, Amazo. That's
which
right.
is, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. They just team up to fight Amazo, and we get to see them fight with Superman and Amazo, and then Superman goes back to the Earth. But yeah, then they basically realize that they need to.
Is this a vibe? Does vibe show them and they see the Wayne in the background?
Cisco has a vibe because this is before he gets rid of his powers.
Yeah. Clearly a not useful thing at all that he can get rid of.
He has a vibe of the moment that we saw earlier in the episode where the stranger gives John Deegan the book, but in the middle of the vibe, the stranger actually turns and starts talking to Cisco, which I think indicates to a lot of people who didn't know who this character was that this is someone who is extremely powerful, right? Like, he's able to interact with space and time in a way that no character we have seen so far has been able to do.
I just remembered the little gag with where they're trying to figure out how to get to wherever this guy is, and Oliver just, with his flash powers, Oliver just goes, okay, well, I've got the data from the Gotham City Police Department.
Oh yeah.
And Barry's like, you stole from the Gotham City Police, and Oliver's like, I didn't. The Flash did.
But yeah, Oliver, Barry, and Kara go to Gotham, which is fun, of course, because Gotham is clearly like the central part of the DC universe.
Which is a real trash heap since Batman disappeared.
Yeah, so
never existed because he's an urban legend.
Yeah, Oliver insists that Batman is an urban legend. But in this Earth, Batman has disappeared. I don't know how many years ago. Several years ago. Yeah. But what's interesting, and I didn't notice this until the second time I watched this through. Batman exists on Kara's Earth, on Earth 38. Like, he's still like in Gotham.
Yeah,
doing Batman
Clark
stuff.
Kent and Bruce Wayne on Earth 38 have a relationship.
Right. And so I didn't realize that until, and that makes the joke where Kara says, isn't it funny how Bruce Wayne disappeared around the same time as Batman? Kara totally knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Well, she's a reporter.
She can see under the mask.
Yeah, like she totally knows but she knows because of Earth 38. But anyway, so
she keeps dropping these hints for them.
Yeah, and they just cannot like understand what she's doing. So they go to Gotham. Gotham is clearly even worse than Star City is in terms of socioeconomic disparity. It's like the rich people get ferried around in these armored cars, and there's like thugs on every street. They get held up. There's a lot of stuff about how Oliver and Barry handle situations differently.
Yeah, if only there was a vigilante hanging around Gotham who could like help.
Would we call this a backdoor pilot?
Yes, this was supposed to be a backdoor pilot.
Okay, so
Episode 2 of Elseworlds.
Episode 2 of Elseworlds is a backdoor pilot for Batwoman. Batwoman. I got it right. This is not Barbara Gordon. This is Kate Kane, who I have not read very many comics of, but I really like the character. So this definitely made me want to go read more of her stories. But Kate Kane bails them out of prison because they get arrested at some point. But she bails them out of prison
immediately.
And Laurel / Black Siren decides to let them stay in jail for a night.
Yeah, that's Laurel. That is Laurel. But so Kate Kane is Bruce Wayne's cousin, right? And is totally not dressing up at night as Batwoman and kicking butt.
Right.
I think this works pretty well. I mean, we'll talk about Batwoman in a future episode, but I think I really like that this isn't an origin story. I think that they learned from the last disastrous backdoor pilot, The Legends of Today, that trying to cram the whole origin story into the crossover doesn't work very well. And so I'm really glad that they just like, she's already Batwoman, she's already like established, she has the costume, she's doing stuff. We get to have these really good interactions, especially between Kara and Kate, that I think work really well. And Kate Kane is played by Ruby Rose. She's in Orange is the New Black.
She is so much better as Batwoman than whatever that character was.
Yeah, and so she I think really does a great job of channeling this character. Like I really believe that Ruby Rose is a badass lesbian who dresses up like a Batman.
Yeah, really the most unbelievable thing about her character is that she's American.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah. But so what basically they decide to she tells them to leave town as Kate Kane, not as Batwoman.
Which they don't do.
Which they don't do, of course. And they go to Arkham Asylum. My favorite part is that they keep talking about Arkham Asylum like it's going to be super easy. Like that this is just like this place that they can break into and like get in, get out or whatever. And like I just kept thinking like they don't know what Arkham Asylum is. Like they fundamentally do not understand the system that works, how this works in Gotham, like or how bad the people are in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, Oswald Cobblepot,
yeah.
Edward Nygma, Victor Freeze,
M. Guggenheim.
And Mark Guggenheim.
And Poison Ivy.
Yeah,
Isley.
What's her name again? Isley. Yeah, P. Isley.
I'm not familiar with Joker's various like pseudonyms. Like, we didn't see a door with any of those?
No.
Did we?
No.
And, yeah.
But I liked...
There are lines we can't cross.
I liked that we didn't spend a lot of time in Arkham. I mean, we did spend, I guess, the last, like, third of the episode there. But I really like that the Arkham in this clearly looks like the video game.
Well, the Art Deco
of noticed?
the Art Deco style of the beginning, or the like the reception area. Like, this is a city that at one point was wealthy and is no longer wealthy.
Right, but like I remember playing through Arkham Asylum and being like as I was watching this, I was like, those staircases though, like there was a lot about this that was clearly trying to echo certain things, I think. And
we get the Batman Rogues Gallery interaction. We get Nora Freeze, and so of course, as I said to Tessa, anytime he's mentioned or invoked by his wife, I until we replace him, I'm always going to say chill out. And we also get the Scarecrow Fear Gas.
Yeah, Scarecrow Fear Gas is
so we get special guests Eobard Thawne and Malcolm Merlyn.
I mean, this really makes me think of the first episode of the Constantine show, because the first episode of Constantine has all these little Easter eggs just everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that they finally get to like do stuff with Batman or the Batman universe through Batwoman, which they clearly wanted to do this entire time. So they get to let themselves have like a little bit of fun.
They get the book back.
One of the police officers says something along the lines of like, "Oh, we got a whatever in progress on Nolan and Burton Street."
Yeah, there's just some really fun like pop culture stuff here, I think, and like we get to have like some fun like face-offs, like because Vibe and Killer Frost show up, and Diggle show up to help them comb through the asylum, and we get to see Nora Freeze and Killer Frost face off. So we get like this like fun like cold match, like stuff like that. But then Batwoman shows up because Deegan steals the book and lets all of the people out of the asylum, which we all knew was going to happen. Batwoman shows up to sort of try to control the situation. She gets to be awesome. And I thought this was a pretty good introduction of the character. I also really appreciated the fact that Kara knew who she was because she could see through the mask. So there's some really good conversations there, I think. But they do end up getting the book back by the end of the... They get the book
back. They say goodbye to Batwoman, Supergirl and Batwoman, World's Finest. It's great. They go to Argus. They manage to bring Earth 90 Barry Allen through to tell them what's happening, that the Monitor, also known as Mar Novu, is testing worlds for some crisis that's coming. Obviously, Earth 90 has failed. And it's Earth 1's time to be. I'm not really sure why they started with Earth 90 and then went to Earth 1.
I think
have
it's
some rhyme to reason here.
Well, you have to remember that Earth 90 is named Earth 90 from the perspective of Earth 1.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I think this is all Earth 1's fault, actually.
So Mar Novu shows back up and is like, I'm not done testing you, steals the book, gives it back to Deegan and says, could you try again this time and like do something cool?
And so reality is reset again with Oliver and Barry waking up as just like depowered criminals.
The Trigger
basically.
Twins.
Yeah, the Trigger Twins.
And Deegan has turned himself into black-suited Superman.
Yeah, so Deegan is now Superman with a black suit because, how would we know?
And
otherwise?
the Earth 1 doppelganger of Alex Danvers works for him at what was formerly Star Labs, where they're holding Kara prisoner.
Yeah, he can't figure out Kara or Superman. Like he knows about them because of their fight with Amazo, but because they don't exist in Earth 1, he can't. Deegan does not know really a lot about them besides their powers. So he takes on Superman's powers and looks like Superman because he knows that Superman is the most powerful person besides Kara, but he doesn't know what to do with Kara, unlike everybody else, and so he just imprisons her basically in Star Labs.
So basically, chaos ensues. Amazo comes back because this is the Supergirl episode, the crossover. Real Superman, Lois, Brainiac, and John all show up. There's a big fight, and then we do Superman. Is it Superman 2 we do in this one?
No, that's in Supergirl.
Well, they do run around the world to slow. They do it like a quasi Superman 2.
No, isn't Superman 2 the one where he flies around the sun?
What? No.
Which one is the one where he runs so fast? Where
It's
Lois
the first
dies
one.
and he runs. Oh, it's Superman 1. Sorry.
Yeah.
They pull
Sam.
a quasi super. Yeah, I know. Well, at least I didn't say Superman 3 because nobody has time for that.
Didn't you see Superman 1 in theaters?
I was not alive when Wait, hold on.
We're going to the Google.
Hold on. Let's
We're
find
going
out.
It was 75. You weren't alive.
That's right.
Sorry.
Close.
Just
So,
making a joke at your
Be
expense.
cool.
Well, no. The whole flying around the Earth backwards to turn back time. That's something that happens in this season of Supergirl.
This one they do it to slow down time.
This one and this really bothered me. I was saying this off of the microphone earlier. So basically, they need to slow down time. So Supergirl and the Flash need to run around the Earth in opposite directions to slow down time.
Because that's how that works.
So Superman, Earth 38, good Superman, can figure out how to rewrite the reality using the book, because they get the book back from Deegan, to put it back the way it was supposed to be. My problem with this, and I really enjoyed this crossover. This is, I think, a pretty good crossover. I really liked it until like the last 20 minutes where this started happening. It didn't make sense to me. Like, this sounded like a solution that they would come up with maybe in season 1. But the problem is that both Supergirl and the Flash both have gone back in time at this point. Like, they both have figured out how to manipulate time using their powers. And so it would have made more sense to me once they got their powers back for one of them to just do what they had done before. Like, for Barry to run back in time or to use flash time or something.
Right, but they have to be running. They have to be in mortal peril so Oliver can get good and pissed off, kick down the janitor's door that leads to the Monitor's secret intergalactic hideout, and demand that something be done, because those two are the good ones. Oliver knows he's not the good one. He's damaged. But if you're looking for people who can save the universe, if that's the whole point of your thing, you need to make sure that Barry and Kara live, because they're the ones who are going to do it for you. And an accord is struck.
Yeah, so
That
this
we
is
do
the
not
thing,
see.
is that yeah,
Yes.
we don't know what the deal was that he made with the Monitor. This is the thing, though, about the last 20 minutes, is that, like, I feel like everything up till now was fun character work, but this is where we start getting, like,
We're doing Crisis.
This is where the pieces start getting moved around to set us up for Crisis, right? Kara and Barry have to be in danger, and so they come up with this again, kind of flimsy reason for them to be in danger because they will die basically if they do this for too long. So that way Oliver will make the deal with the Monitor. Whatever the deal is supposed to set off Crisis, or not set off Crisis, but it basically brings him to the point where his role in Crisis is set. And then we also have to like move around some of these other pieces, like Barry has to be able to face his own death, and it just, to me, it seemed like there was a lot of like, oh, this is actually just a prequel to Crisis.
And I mean,
that happens sort of.
They
in the last
even
20 minutes.
show the title card at the end. Crisis on Infinite Earths coming.
Yeah, coming in 2019. And we get to see the newspaper, because originally Barry is set to disappear in 2021 or 2024. Right. But then we get to see like the year in the time ball on the newspaper counts down to 2019.
Right. And other things start to line up when Deegan ends up in Arkham as a patient. He interacts with Roger Hayden, who's the Psycho Pirate, who is a major player in our Crisis source material. So there's a lot of, as Tessa said, putting things into place.
Well, and like the whole point of this crossover, the whole point of Elseworlds, right? The only reason the Monitor would put the book in the hands of John Deegan is that only someone like John Deegan could dream up a reality that shifted things enough that it would approximate. He says that it would approximate the Crisis to come. And so the idea is that he's been testing these worlds, and this is the only world that has managed to beat the test, to do well enough, I guess, that he thinks that they have a shot at surviving Crisis, which of course is coming next year.
Right.
Well, at the time it was coming next year. Now it's coming in a couple months.
A couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks, you're right.
We are like 2.5 weeks away, I think.
Yeah, so it, I feel like this crossover started strong. It didn't end as strong for me. It felt a little contrived at the end, but we do get some really interesting, like Felicity and Oliver make up. We get some of these more interesting interactions between people at the very end. But and also Oliver makes this deal with the Monitor that we don't know.
Right. So one thing that happens at the end of all 4 shows, Arrow, Flash, Legends, and Supergirl. Supergirl? There is one in Supergirl. Yes, there is. There are all nods to Crisis. So Elseworlds finishes in 3 episodes. The Legends are left out, which does come up on the Legends show. But all 4 shows have references to the Monitor in Crisis. We talked about Flashes, where the newspaper changes at the season finale, and I guess this was the part that we saved for later about Arrow.
Yeah, and so at the end of Arrow in the last season, as Andy mentioned earlier, Felicity in the future in 2040, she visits Oliver's grave. So there's a lot of people who believe that Oliver will die in Crisis. And
the end of the season, of course, after Oliver and Felicity peace out,
so yeah,
and have baby Mia, the Monitor appears and says it's time.
Yeah, he says it's time for you to leave.
That's it.
Rejoin Oliver at a place of no return.
Yep. Roll credits.
Right. Final save spot.
So yep. I like that final save spot. I think that these seasons, like one of the really strong points of where we are in all of these seasons is this idea that like things are going to be fundamentally different from this point onward.
Well, on some shows.
I mean, and like some shows, as we've seen so far, some shows have done that better than others. But like this idea that like I feel like with a lot of these shows we've been in holding patterns for a while, and some of the holding patterns have been good, some of them are not so great. But the idea that we're moving past it, we're like moving towards something, is actually really exciting. And I think we've at least seen, and we'll talk about the next season of Arrow later, but we've seen that some of these creative risks that they're starting to take have been paying off.
Yeah, if what's really interesting is if you want to compare it to the MCU, Elseworlds is clearly Infinity War. This is it. And we're about to get our end game, and it'll be interesting to see how well they do of a job. But also, what happens after Endgame? That's something that's interesting too. Like, we were moving towards something very clearly now. And, Marvel, we haven't seen how Marvel's going to do it either. But what happens after you get past the thing you were moving toward?
Well, and we know that this season, this season 8 of Arrow, is the last season of Arrow.
Which has been great so far. We'll talk about it later, but it's just been great.
And so just knowing that, and knowing that there's 2 episodes of Arrow post-Crisis, is that right? Is that what they're scheduled?
I believe so.
Yeah, that gives this all a sense of urgency. I think that these shows desperately needed. Not that I'm actively rooting for Oliver to be killed off, but I think the idea that there are stakes and that we are going somewhere, again, it gives us some more life in these shows as well.
Yep. I think that's about it. We were able to do this in a little bit faster time than normal. So.
Oh, there is one thing we forgot to mention about Arrow, though. Emily Bett Rickards left the show.
She gone.
So that was supposed to be our last sight of Felicity for a while, although that's probably going to change when we get to Crisis. But she is not so far in this last season of Arrow.
Right. They did announce that she's coming back for the last episode.
Yes.
Right.
But I think everyone's coming back for the last episode because the CW wants to send Arrow off properly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And Kevin Smith's doing an after show for 2 episodes of Crisis. I don't know if he's going to do one for the last episode of Arrow, but I guess we all have to have after shows now.
Yep. Well, go ahead and plug your pluggables, guys.
I am on Twitter at Swela Tessa. Swela is spelled SWEHLA.
And I am on Twitter at Sam_Morris9.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at Hebrews Pale Ale. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Geek101pod. You can find all of us, or all episodes of the Geek 101 Pod, wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. That's all we have for today. Class dismissed.